Sir, the princess is playing a hand game with the human.
That's not a game. That's a coronation.
Kalen lost the princess for 7 minutes and 20 seconds, which was statistically long enough for an Ilvain heir to start a border war, get engaged, or worse. Dree was praying for the border war. She checked the nursery. Empty. She checked the observation deck, the ceremonial garden, and the room with the singing crystals that Princess Salen claimed to hate, but visited every single day. Empty, empty, empty. Meanwhile, I'm Jonah Reyes, and I was sitting cross-legged on a supply crate in Cargo Bay 4, teaching a 9-year-old how to play rock, paper, scissors, best of 3, because she'd been losing to the vending machine for a week, and it was starting to feel personal. She'd wandered in during my lunch break, introduced herself as Salen, just Salen, and demanded I teach her a human game that didn't involve singing crystals. I taught her the only one I remembered that didn't need cards. Rock beats scissors, I told her. Scissors beats paper. Paper beats rock. Nobody knows why paper beats rock. It's one of life's great mysteries. She took this extremely seriously. I respected that. Dree found us on the security feed 12 minutes later, and her first reaction, by her own later admission, was relief. Her second reaction, 5 seconds after that, was to drop her coffee. Because Princess Salen wasn't just playing a hand game. She was playing it in the old cadence. Fist, pause, reveal, fist, pause, reveal, the same rhythm, the same 3 count, the same open palm submission on the losing round. Dree had seen that rhythm exactly once before, in a historical archive, performed by a 9-year-old regent 500 years ago on the day her empire stopped being ruled by committee. Dree did not drop her coffee a second time. She simply stopped holding things. She pulled the xenobiology division instead of security, because security would ask questions and Dr. Kestrin would not. Kestrin just watched the feed twice, went very pale, and said, "Please tell me she has not made a fist 3 times in a row." "She's made a fist 11 times, Dree said. "Is he losing on purpose?" "He's letting her win the last round." Kestrin sat down without finding a chair first. For anyone unfamiliar with the finer points of Ilvain constitutional law, and I certainly was, being 2 systems away from home, and mostly focused on whether the crate I was sitting on was going to give me splinters, the right of open hands is how an Ilvain monarch has designated a protector-consort for 11 centuries. 3 rounds. A shared rhythm. A deliberate loss on the final exchange. Offered, not taken. It hasn't been performed by accident in recorded history, mostly because nobody accidentally learns a 500-year-old succession ritual from a vending machine grudge. I taught her rock, paper, scissors because she looked bored and I like kids who ask good questions. She asked 11 of them. I have never been so popular in my life. Word of the security feed reached the bridge before Dree finished her second cup of coffee. Commander Baseric Nile arrived at Cargo Bay for the way commanders do, which is to say badly and shouting. He took one look at the feed, then at Kestrin's face, then at Dree's empty coffee cup, and said the sentence that would later get quoted in at least 8 internal memos. Has the outsider read the Concordat, or did he just guess correctly 11 times in a row? Nobody answered, because the answer was worse than either option. I hadn't guessed. I hadn't read anything. I'd learned rock, paper, scissors from my uncle at a barbecue in 2019 and had simply, without any awareness whatsoever, performed the closing ceremony of a 500-year-old blood rite against a small girl who really wanted to beat a vending machine. Baseric requested backup. Then he requested a lawyer. Then, quietly, he requested someone check whether accidental protector consorts had ever been unappointed, and the archive returned exactly one result, which was no, followed by a much longer document titled Why Not, which nobody had time to read before the next round even started. Then he requested the Cargo Bay sealed, which was the moment the day stopped being merely bad and started being a diplomatic incident. 2 rival houses held standing claims contesting any irregular succession bond. Baseric reminded the room, and both would very much like to know that the Crown's new protector consort could be talked into anything by a 9-year-old with a grudge against a vending machine. He is now, Baseric said slowly, a target. A soft one. A friendly, unarmed, extremely confused target. Should we tell him that part? Dree asked. Absolutely not, Basric said. Not until legal signs off. Possibly not ever. Kestrin, meanwhile, had moved past horror into something closer to academic obsession, murmuring into a recorder that the subject displayed zero awareness of ritual significance, zero formal training, and a completion accuracy of 100%, which was, in 11 centuries of recorded attempts, unprecedented. Nobody had ever performed the rite correctly, by accident. Most people who tried it on purpose botched the cadence. He's not even trying, Kestrin said, mostly to herself. That's the part one can't get past. She pulled up the archive footage of the last accidental near completion, a merchant captain 400 years prior who had fumbled the second round out of nerves and spent the rest of his life explaining to historians why he'd flinched. Kestrin stared at the side-by-side comparison for a long moment. The merchant captain's hands shook. Mine on the recording did not, mostly because I did not know there was anything to be nervous about. She marked the file unprecedented and closed it before anyone could ask her to defend that word in a formal review. By the time Queen Myrlath Vosk swept into cargo bay 4 and she did sweep, robes and all, because apparently that's just how you enter a room when your daughter has gone missing for the better part of an hour, the third round was already finishing. I opened my palm. Salen's small fist landed against it with the triumphant force of a girl who had finally beaten something. Best 2 out of 3, she announced. I win. You do, I agreed. Good game. The queen stopped in the doorway. Just stopped, mid-stride, robes still moving for a second after the rest of her didn't. I remember thinking she had good balance for someone in heels that tall. I did not, at the time, understand that I was looking at a woman watching her daughter's entire political future get sealed by a man who thought best 2 out of 3 was a fun way to spend a lunch break. Nobody explained anything to me for 6 days. I want that on record. When they finally did, very slowly with diagrams, I asked the only question that seemed relevant. So I'm like her bodyguard now? Officially? Protector-consort, Basric said, in the tone of a man who had aged considerably that week. Bound by right. Recognized across the Concordat. Legally unbreakable outside of mutual formal release, which has happened 5 times in 11 centuries, and each of those 5 times, it happened after a war. Huh? I said. I thought I was just being nice about the last round. You let her win. She's 9. I let 9-year-olds win things. It's called being a decent person. Basric put his head in his hands. Somewhere behind him, Kestrin was already drafting a paper titled Unintentional Ritual Completion by Non-Native Species, a threat assessment, which would go on to be the most read document in the history of Ilvain xenobiology, mostly out of horror, and partly, she'd admit later, out of professional jealousy. Queen Myrlath, for her part, never raised her voice about any of it. She simply had me moved to guest quarters 1 deck closer to the royal wing, assigned me a translator I didn't ask for, and began referring to me, in official correspondence, as the consort of unconventional appointment, which I'm told is as close as Ilvain diplomacy gets to a shrug. Salen, for her part, thought the whole thing was hilarious, and has since taught me 2 more hand games, both of which I have insisted on checking with the palace archivist before playing. Turns out thumb war is fine. Rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock, however, is apparently how you propose marriage on Ilvos Prime, and I would like everyone to know that I found that out before I said yes to a rematch, not after. Barely.